Hi, my name is Abigail Ware, and this is my presentation on adolescence, the impacts of social media on development. So adolescence is defined as the developmental stage of people between the ages of 11 and 22. Hutchinson in our textbook breaks it down between early, middle, and late adolescence, but for the purpose of this presentation, adolescence will just be people between the ages of 11 and 22, that developmental stage. Biologically, during this time, people are going through puberty. Hutchinson emphasizes sexual and physical growth during puberty in the chapter, but neurologically, our brain is overproducing gray matter like it does in the womb, but it's doing it right before puberty. So for girls at age 11 and boys age 12. And because it's overproducing this gray matter, development is being molded into your brain through your experiences and interactions with the outside world. So that's why it's such an important developmental stage. Psychologically, in adolescence, we're becoming interested in finding ourselves, which is something we will talk a lot about in this presentation. So according to Hutchinson, cognitive development is very important during adolescence because of the neurological things going on and the psychological things going on. So our reasoning is being improved. We gain the ability to think abstractly, and we gain the ability to think about thinking, which they describe as metacognition. So we basically start to develop an identity, which leads me into socially. Socially, our identity develops through adolescence. So our identity develops through our social interactions, who we surround ourselves with, and basically our interactions with the outside world. So one of the characteristics of adolescence that I wanted to focus on is identity. So identity is broken down into further ways we identify ourselves. So psychological identity, social identity, gender identity, and cultural identity. We're going to be focusing a lot on social identity during this presentation because of the fact that we're talking about social media, but I wanted to touch briefly on the other types of identity. So psychological identity is just an inner definition of self and us as a separate individual. So that's something that we start to develop during adolescence. For social identity, this is a quote from page 446 in the textbook. Social identity is the part of self-concept that comes from knowledge of one's membership in a social group and the emotional significance of that group. So that is a huge thing that happens during adolescence, is our becoming part of a social group and how we identify ourselves within that group. For gender identity, we begin understanding our gender in adolescence, but it forms and molds and it can change and basically be elaborated on throughout adolescence. For culture, like I said, through our identity, we're discovering who we are, where we came from. We're probably having those conversations with our families and parents about where we identify with our culture and with ethnicity. And during this time, we also start to look at our peers in the outside world and look at how we're different and how we're the same culturally. So how does social media impact adolescence in this development? So social media, especially now, plays a large role in adolescents' lives. There are a lot of negative impacts on development. The literature highlights a lot of different things about how social media impacts adolescents' lives, specifically an obsession with physical appearance, mainly in females, overall lower psychological well-being, and overall it hinders development and well-being. And we'll talk more about that. But these studies highlight how more social media use and what we view on social media impacts our overall well-being and how it lowers psychological well-being. And because social media is a recent thing in terms of research, we've only kind of been in this age of social media for, I would say, around 6 to 10 years. Maybe less. It's hard to say how social media impacts our development over time because the people that grew up in the generation of social media are not really in middle adulthood yet. We're all still kind of in this stage of early adulthood. It's hard to say how it has impacted development over time and how it will impact us into middle adulthood. But these research studies highlight how it has impacted development and our well-being over a short period of time. So if we're looking at a systems perspective, a main system that we interact with in adolescence is our family and our relationships with our family. So our family relationships develop during adolescence because of this new identity that we are looking at. We are discovering ourselves, like I said, and we are separating ourselves from our siblings and from our family. So we're basically, our identity is not that of our siblings. We are identifying ourselves separate from them and also our parents. So with this becomes a new sense of autonomy. And with this autonomy comes conflict because parent and child relationships are kind of becoming separate, and parents are learning how to deal with this new sense of autonomy, and kids are trying to break free of the holds that their parents might have had on them and also might still have on them. But the book references a study of African American and Latino families who typically have very strong family values. So they stay close knit and they have less autonomy naturally. But for typical white American families, they have more autonomy, which could create more conflict. According to this study by Lewis, parents do not like their kids' social media use. They think that with all of the stressors that they're already going through during adolescence, that their social media use just adds to it, and the things that they see adds additional stressors that are not needed. Yeah. So, however, there was a study that showed that in Latino families, social media improved students' or families' relationships with kids in the classroom and allowed them to have more hands-on approach in their child's education. Because of the communication barriers, they were able to go online or use social media or use the various platforms that schools have to be more engaged in their child's education. So this would be one of the positive impacts that social media has on family relationships. However, there are not many. Another important system to look at from the systems perspective is our relationship with our peers. This is a huge thing in adolescence, our relationship with our peers and how social media impacts that. So with social media, there's a sense of connectedness and disconnectedness. Connectedness in terms of we are constantly on call with our friends. We are always at the, like, our friends can always reach us, our family can always reach us. So we have that sense of we can always reach people regardless of how far away they are at any time of the day. But with that comes a sense of disconnectedness from the outside world in the present. There's a lot of not living in the present. And like I have repeated, it is a sense of disconnectedness from the present. This study, Peer Belongingness Based on Likes on Social Media, unfortunately, likes on social media play a huge role in self-worth in adolescence. How many likes people get on their post, on their picture that they posted, matters to people, and it matters, and it elevates or hinders their self-worth and their self-esteem. So this study found that more likes, or peer belongingness, was directly impacted by how many likes people got on social media. The following study also showed that it created body image issues, and it had higher body image issues with adolescents who interacted with more attractive peers on social media. And based on that interaction, it lowered, or it had a higher impact on their body image issues, which definitely during this time of identity and self-development can definitely hinder self-esteem during this time. So some dilemmas we will experience as practitioners. So like I keep saying, adolescence is a very important developmental stage. With all of the psychological and finding ourselves identity things that are going on, we have to remember that clients have a right to self-determination, and while we can't control what they see online, and while like I said, we can't control what they see online, and we need to allow them to find themselves and identify how they want to identify. However, we can help them understand that what they see online is not true, and we can also help them with their mental health and with their self-esteem, because that is something that, because of social media and the impact it does have on development, we are going to need to do is help them with their self-esteem. So how does this affect social work practice? Social media impacts our everyday life. We use social media to connect with our friends and family. We use it to look at the news. We use it to learn about politics, everything. So it's very important for us to understand, especially when working with adolescents. So this study found that social media and multicultural competency is very important to adolescents, and these adolescents had a better relationship with their therapist if they thought that they had a social media and multicultural competency. So they basically thought higher of their therapist if they thought they understood what they understand. So like I said, it's very important for us to understand this, because if we do understand what people are seeing online and we do understand kind of what's going on behind the scenes, we can better help these people, these adolescents, with their self-esteem and help them grow in a way that's not so focused on social media and self-worth. We can help them figure out their identity outside of this online presence that they might have. Also, health and mental health services are now completely online at the moment because of everything going on with 2020. So it is important for us to understand this and understand how technology and social media are playing a role in our lives. And as social workers, we need to understand just what is going on and how we can help these people through this new age that we're living in. These are my references, and thank you for listening.